Hey, folks, welcome to Steelers Morning Rush, our new short form podcast based on the Pittsburgh Steelers, where I talk about one topic every day for about 5 to 10 minutes. And I thank you all for listening and watching. The response to this has been amazing, continues to be amazing. Getting so many comments about people liking the shorter format. Somebody said they like it on their break or when they're supposed to be working. So, just don't tell your boss, but you can listen to Steelers Morning Rush anytime throughout the day. It doesn't have to be in the morning. Today, I'm going to talk about something that we got a question from a member of the audience, Dennis Lavelle, said, Alan, when projecting 53, do you, or more importantly, do you think Mike Tomlin uses potential upside more on a rookie than any other player, or is it players who are on their first contract? I'd appreciate if you could expound on that a little bit. Actually, I'm going to expound on that a lot of bit, not just about rookies. Anytime you're talking about an NFL player, the more experience they have, the less anything other than that experience plays into the outcome. So when you're talking about a player like Russell Wilson, for example, the Steelers probably don't need to see very much of him in training camp and in the preseason. As long as he physically looks like about the same player that he was last year, then they should expect to get about the same results they got last year because he has a 10, 12-year track record of doing it in the NFL. Justin Fields, maybe he'll be a little bit better, maybe he won't, but he's been a 3-year starter. We should expect him to be about as good as he's been over 3 years. And yeah, I mean, it's a new offense, it's a new system, but like, hey, guess what? It's a new offense and a new system for Dan Moore, too. I don't see Steelers fans like bursting with joy over optimism that a new offense is going to make Dan Moore a significantly better player this year. Generally, when you have experience, you are who you are. There are some exceptions, things change, but largely you should expect players with a track record to meet that track record. When you're talking about players that don't have a track record, yeah, I mean, potential plays a lot of part into it. But there are a lot of factors, and that is only one. You can have potential, but you also can't just take up a roster spot just because it's potential most of the time. There are exceptions, but most of the time. So, for example, let's talk about a player towards the bottom of the roster with potential who may be in a roster battle. Let's talk about Ryan Watts, the Steelers' 6th-round pick out of Texas. He was a college cornerback. The Steelers have moved him to strong safety. I think it was a good move. I think he has a lot of potential, to use that word again, as a strong safety. Is he going to play strong safety for the Steelers in 2024? Probably not. I mean, Deshaun Elliott is the team starter. Last year, they played Minkah Fitzpatrick at strong safety when they had injuries and played DeMonte KZ at free safety. They're very comfortable with KZ playing a lot of free safety. Miles Killebrew is going to make this team as a special teamer. He is by position a strong safety, although he doesn't do it very often. So you're talking about multiple injuries that would be required for Ryan Watts to play strong safety. Still, like the potential, I think a player that they want to keep around. But he's going to have to find some other reason to make this 53-man roster. He has potential. Now, look at a guy like Grayland Arnold, for example. Okay. Now, Grayland Arnold is a player who's been around. He does not have what you would call a lot of potential left. He has that track record that I was talking about, right? Grayland Arnold has been in the league since 2020. He's played 1 season with the Eagles and 3 seasons with the Houston Texans. We should expect him to be who he's been. But we're talking about one spot at the end of the roster here. And okay, what can they do on special teams? How many positions can they provide depth for? Can they play a sub-package role? Yeah, Watts' potential is one piece of that, but it's only a piece. And if everything else is the same, that can kind of be a tiebreaker for a young player to make the roster over a more experienced one. So if you look at this and you're like, okay, Arnold, he can play free safety and he can play nickel. He can play, 4-phase special teams, punt, cover, punt, block, kickoff, cover, kickoff, return. He can, so, okay, that's what he brings to the table. If you can say all those things about Watts, if you could say, and I don't know that we can right now, we'll find out, if Watts could be a 4-phase special teamer, and let's say you say Watts, okay, he could be a backup strong safety, and he could be a dime defender, and he could be an emergency option at outside corner because he did do that in college. Okay, it feels like he's bringing a lot of the same things to the table, okay, but he's 3 years younger and has that magic word potential. So, like, that could be a tiebreaker there. But there are other places, like if you look at defensive line, okay, Logan Lee, the other 6th-round pick, is in a battle with DeMarvin Leal and Isaiah Loudermilk. Okay, Isaiah Loudermilk, very stout run defender, probably the best depth defensive lineman they have in terms of run defense. DeMarvin Leal has a lot of pass rush ability. Now, he hasn't necessarily shown it. He's been both these guys have been like sort of bottom of the rotation defensive linemen. They have extensive history in their career. They're not new. They're not young, but they are who they are. But if you're looking at the rest of the Steelers' defensive line, depth options, Dean Lowry, not a great pass rusher. Montravius Adams, not a great pass rusher. And so when you look at a guy like DeMarvin Leal, that pass rush ability, he's bringing something to the table that Logan Lee cannot. He does not have that same level of pass rush ability. And so if you're the Steelers and you're looking at this depth defensive line battle and you're saying, well, what happens if Cam doesn't get back to being the same pass rusher he was in 2020? What happens if, like, God forbid, like Keanu Benton gets hurt? Like, there's not a lot of pass rush depth on this defensive line. Sure, we can plug and play Lowry for run stopping. We can plug and play Loudermilk for run stopping. There needs to be somebody else to rush the passer, and Leal brings more of that to the table than anybody else. I don't think Logan Lee's potential is going to be a tiebreaker there. I think it's about the skill sets not lining up, right? I think he will have to. Now, maybe he could pass Loudermilk, a run player, or Lowry, a run player. But Leal having that rarer skill to me is a lot more important than having a little bit of potential. So I hope that kind of answers the question about how much potential matters. The last thing about this is that other teams will value your potential differently than you sometimes. Sometimes there are players that you think are going to be good or you think have a chance to be good as a college player, and then for whatever reason, they just don't work out in the NFL. I remember a player, a Steelers had a slot cornerback by the name of Shakur Brown out of Michigan State, was an undrafted free agent. He was one of these guys that like everybody thought was going to get drafted. It was crazy that he made it through the draft undrafted. The Steelers signed him, and he was a very popular pick to make the team as an undrafted free agent. He had lots of potential, but then the Steelers saw him. They were like, oh no, that's not going to work. That potential, that's not happening. And so, he got picked up after the Steelers cut him 2 or 3 more times. He was with the Titans. He was with the Detroit Lions, I think, for a while. But, he never ended up having any kind of NFL career. I think the last time I checked, he was playing in Canada. So, potential, like sometimes it doesn't take very much evaluation to figure out that what looked like might be potential isn't there. So just because you're young and just because you don't have that track record doesn't mean you have that potential there. And sometimes, teams make moves that people scratch their heads about, but they've seen enough. They realize that is not coming. A lot of that sometimes has to do more with off the field stuff than it does on the field stuff. If you see the way the person can think the game, learn the game, practice effort, energy level, things like that, that's not showing up on his college tape. But once you get him in the room for one summer, you can kind of be like, oh, I don't think this guy's ever going to put it all together. And then at that point, just because you're young doesn't mean you have potential, and teams will move on from guys as a result. Hope that answered that question. I hope you guys found this a little bit interesting. Keep the questions coming, of course, if you want me to address a topic here or on Steelers Afternoon Drive with Zachary Smith. And make sure you like, subscribe, click that bell for notifications so you don't miss anything here on the Steelers Now YouTube channel. We will have another practice report today. I will, after practice at St. Vincent College, and then another episode of Afternoon Drive with me and Zach a little bit later on. So stay tuned for that. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you later.